Less than 24 hours ago from shooting this video, Joe Rogan publishes an over 3-hour-long conversation with Tucker Carlson. As soon as I saw it, I knew I needed to look at it with a communication lens. Here's a few reasons why. The first is that they are both professional communicators. Tucker Carlson now has the Tucker Carlson Network, which he just got off the heels of an exclusive interview with Russian President Vladimir Putin. In addition, he just had on Chris Cuomo, which is essentially his arch nemesis, both of which ended up in incredible conversations. Joe Rogan, on the other hand, has the world's biggest podcast where he gets some of the world's biggest guests week in and week out. The second is that they had really good conversation energy. In particular, they were a very good conversation match. This video, we're going to look at exactly what I mean by that, but I'll show you some different tips and techniques that both Joe and Tucker employed to make the conversation as special as it was. The conversation was shot in Joe's studio in Austin, Texas. As I said, it's over 3 hours long, so I won't be showing the whole entire video. If you do want to see the whole conversation, it looks like 1.16 million people have already beat you to the punch, but I'll put the link in the description below. And if you have already listened to or watched the whole conversation, comment below what you thought of it. I'm going to be providing an analysis, and I'd love to hear about your feedback on the analysis as well. I know I won't be able to touch everything. It was a long conversation, but I'll try and take out some of the big parts. All right, let's hop into it.
All day!
Did you see the U.S. government just released, apparently by accident, the Project Aqua stuff? Did you see this?
No. What's that?
This is crazy.
Yeah, I guess we're rolling.
Are we rolling?
Yeah.
No. You can. This is just someone just sent me this. This is like
Project Aqua?
Yeah. Hold on. They just released, I think, by accident.
How does that happen?
It's Kona Blue. You familiar with this?
No.
Kona Blue is it was a program. I'm going to send this to Homeland Security. Just released this.
Send it to me. I'll send it to Jamie.
And no, I got it right here. I'll just. I don't do email or what. I don't know how to airdrop anything.
You don't do email?
No.
So just starting off the conversation, let's look at the rhetorical setting here. As I said, they are in the JRE studio. We can tell from the jump it's a casual conversation, but it's rare to see phones out in the Joe Rogan experience. Even later on in this conversation, he talks about how whenever he records podcasts, it's a reprieve from phones. But this is typical for Tucker because what he's doing is he has the fresh take. He has new info, and it indicates, it previews something that we see in this conversation, and that's Tucker is innately curious about a lot of things. This has helped him as a journalist. His whole entire life is about presenting information in a logical way, and in particular, combining the information he presents with the convictions inside of himself. So throughout this podcast, I'm going to start by showing you how they get into this first subject, but then we'll look at a couple different ways Tucker presents information, and he's quite good at it, be it rants or be it facts or analogies. And then we'll see how Joe received this really well. In addition, some of the questions he asked to really bring it out of him.
Yeah. I mean, here's what we do know is that there's enough going on in the skies, but not just the skies, underwater, that the U.S. military has been forced to respond to it. So, like, move aircraft from one place to another because there are too many of these objects in the sky. That's actually happened. Chris Mellon just wrote a long piece about it. So it's real. The government is not controlling it. In fact, it's forcing the government, DOD, to respond. And we know that there is a real effort and has been underway for a long time to keep the public from knowing about it. But that's all known. That's established. I don't think any rational person would deny that. The question is, like, what is it, actually? I mean, now is sort of the point where you have to ask, like, what is this? And
so they start, first topic being UFOs. It's a new article that's come out. Tucker sharing it with Joe. Young Jamie pulls it up on the screen. And in beginning this discussion, Tucker lays out the question, well, what is this? And they really use the first almost half hour navigating this. But throughout the first half hour, Joe mainly listens, which typically whenever you have a guest on, the goal is to get the guest to talk more, which he did here. Tucker talks about 85% of the time. So regarding conversational turn taking, Tucker really has the floor. But Joe, whenever he does talk, he does two different things. Oftentimes he'll ask probing questions. These are short, open-ended questions. I'll show you a few. And the second thing is sometimes he pushes back, which results in what the probing questions result in, which is more information or more backing. Let me show you some probing questions.
As measured by people, and they've been here for a long time. And there's a ton of evidence they're under the ocean and under the ground. So, like, with that fact set, what do you conclude?
When did you start having this opinion that they were spiritual and that they've always been here? Like, when did this?
Well, I didn't know anything about the topic until 2017. And
was that after the New York Times piece?
No, it was before. It was before, and the things that I saw, I was
possessed.
Yes.
That you're possessed by evil. There's always been this thought that there's good and evil. But when did you start considering that and thinking that that's because weren't you at one point in time? Weren't you a Grateful Dead head?
Oh yeah, I listened to him this morning. Yeah,
you used to travel around with them.
Yeah.
How old were you?
We don't spend enough time thinking about what that adds up to. Not good, actually, not good.
How many people do you think have died from these things?
I don't know, but I mean,
And is it radiation sickness? Is it what is? What's the
so
cause
the person
of death?
that I talked to, I interviewed someone who was a Stanford medical school professor who's out there and worth talking to, by the way.
And you combine the open-ended questions with a little disagreeableness. I'll show you some examples of this.
The obvious explanation, right?
It's not that obvious to me.
So what's more obvious, do you think?
Well, I don't think there's an obvious explanation. I think if I had to guess, some of this stuff is ours, and some of these things are.
You can tell the change in emotion right there.
Very recent assumption.
Not that obvious to me.
The trademark Tucker laugh and then the Joe look.
So what?
Then we have.
But I think
it's important to be honest about what your agenda is.
I think she is honest. And I really like her.
Yeah.
I like talking
I'm not
to her.
against,
She's a very intelligent person.
Not against her personally.
I just think that was a mistake.
Important. Then what do we think is important? I guess that's what I'm saying.
Not necessarily that we don't think people are important, but if evolution is real, and if there is this constant, I don't know, but it's visible. You can measure it in certain.
And what works best with this combination of open-ended questions and a little disagreeableness is to have someone who's firm with their conviction and who's willing to talk and rant. And Tucker fits that spot perfectly. I'll show you some moments here where Tucker does some things that other people wouldn't be likely to do. For instance, call someone out by name on one of the world's largest podcasts.
A guy called John Podhoretz, and he was one of the weirdest, most unhappy people I've ever met in my life. And he would come into my office occasionally, and he would he had a really hairy back, and he would rub it against the door frame, and say these kind of obscure. He was stupid, but he didn't know that he was. He was actually kind of dumb, but he didn't know it, and he would kind of philosophize. I was 10 years younger, and I was his captive, so he would just lecture me.
It resonates with you that's what you've seen.
You had a moment
before.
with Barry Weiss on your show that went everywhere. I saw a clip of it. I never saw the show itself, but she was going on about. So she was posing as one thing, and then you pressed her. You're like, well, hold on a second. What do you mean by that? You just attacked somebody, and she had no idea what she was talking about. And it became really clear to me watching it. I completely changed my view of Barry Weiss forever. I was like, oh, she's a fraud, actually. This person's not honest at all. She has thought, and I reached out to this guy, by the way.
Matthew Olson?
No, I wish. Matthew Olson would never do my show. I mean, the guy whose salary I pay as a U.S. citizen? No, he would never speak to me.
Listen, look at that quote. Russia's Foreign Intelligence Services.
1999, he had a magazine with Tina Brown called Talk Magazine. I was the head political writer for it, and they had an office at Carnegie Towers in New York, right below the park. And I remember I remember that he was a pig. I was not an intimate friend of his or whatever, but I certainly dealt with him. And the big controversy was he was smoking in elevators. And I've kind of supported that.
And him calling out people by name, if you know Tucker, it's not unusual for him to do that, but it is unusual for people to do that because typically we think about everything else. We think about what people are thinking. We think about how this is going to blow back. But for him, it's almost like an afterthought. It seems like he makes the wager of, should I speak with my conviction or should I avoid the drama? And he's choosing to speak with his conviction. I think this is very powerful. I think he has leveraged it in a way that's really set him up to make a difference. But I also think that for some of us watching, it's hard for us to implement that in our lives. But it's good for us to remember what are those convictions that we could speak on. In this conversation, almost 30 times, he says the phrase, believe. Like, I believe this, or we should believe this. And he also uses the phrase, we can't. So I believe this and we can't do that. It's strong. And he also uses the phrase, we can't. So I believe and we can't. I believe this and we can't do that. It's strong words. It's prophetic rhetoric. He's speaking something into existence based off his convictions. So when you pair the two of them together, Joe Rogan, who's willing to explore just about whatever depth, with Tucker Carlson, someone who has strong conviction and has a ability to go on rants and provide logical explanations, it gets into some interesting conversation. And I think this is why the conversation is only going to grow from here. It has 1.1 million views. I imagine it's going to have a lot more because this is going to be a historic conversation. Both of them talk for a living. And if you want to see an example of two people getting together to have a substantial conversation, this is a great instance. There's so much more that we could talk about in a 3-hour conversation, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know what you think I missed. Let me know what you thought of the conversation. In addition, if you like content like this, looking with a communication lens, then subscribe to this channel. You may be interested in the analysis I did over Vladimir Putin and Tucker Carlson. I'll put that up right here. I hope you enjoy it. Check out the description below for more videos, and I'll see you next time.